He had one ideal. He dedicated his life to this ideal. He believed. He thought. He fought and won. From the ruins of a fallen empire, he managed to found a young and dynamic republic. Although the people were crushed, desperate, and destitute, he was able to create an army and a nation. The greatest commander the Turkish nation had ever seen. The son and the father of this country. His name is Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Mustafa was born an Ottoman. The glorious days of the empire were far behind. The empire's inevitable end was gradually getting closer, and those were the years that the ideas of this young officer were shaped. The seeds of freedom that were planted into his soul would give fruit in the hard days to come. Those were dark days. The black clouds were covering the sky, but one bright glance was ignored. This man, who had the ambition of freedom and independence, was about to change the history and rewrite the fate of a nation. This glance was shouting the truth out loud. Clouds might have covered the sun and shadowed the hopes, but couldn't hinder his passion for freedom. This passion was the purpose of his life. The independence of the nation meant his independence. Even when he was a student, he had a unique conception, and he was able to predict the scenarios endangering the country. He was determined. The dark final scene of this film would see the light thanks to his pen. The world became aware of Mustafa Kemal in the First World War, the war that reshaped the borders of the countries and altered the destiny of them. He was self-confident and determined to transform the misery of his nation into a huge power in order to write the epic of the 20th century in the Dardanelles. Thousands of patriots followed his orders. They had neither adequate weapons nor ammunition, yet they used their bodies as a shield to protect the homeland. Mustafa Kemal ordered them to fight till death. He was ready to die as well. He wouldn't permit to see any flag other than his nation's, even though that cost him all his men. He had many sleepless nights before he'd set his country free from the occupation forces. This young commander's best friend was his books during these sleepless nights. In the light of science and reason, he pondered, planned, and implemented his ideas in no time. Although the people were crushed, desperate, and destitute, he was able to create an army and a nation. He didn't care about his own life. Independence or death, he addressed his nation. The only award for this great leader was the salvation and civilization of the country. In the Dardanelles, there were bombs versus bayonets, and his heart was hit by a piece of shrapnel. But what protected his heart was his patriotism and the faith his people had in him. Mustafa Kemal became an immortal hero. This meant, as long as he was alive, his nation would exist. According to Mustafa Kemal, life without freedom is not a life. And to obtain freedom, the nation's resolution and determination is indispensable. He declared these thoughts in Amasya. He was ceaseless and tireless. He would not give up. He met with the representatives from Anatolia to determine the roadmap to save the homeland. Running from one front to the next, people were already in poverty. The agricultural production in Anatolia was ceased and people were hopeless. Yet tougher days lied ahead of them. To nurture themselves, they had nothing but belief. They only needed a great leader to transform this belief into power. And Mustafa Kemal was the only leader to reunite the patriots. All the elements of the nation combined around him. The beloved sons of their mothers enlisted to the army without any hesitation. Mustafa Kemal was also a child of this country. He belonged to this country. Young or old, anyone who could use a weapon was the child of the country he was trying to save. Each and every soldier was like a son to him. When one of them gave his last breath, he grieved like their parents. The dark, bloody scenes of war reflected his feelings in his blue eyes and also made him braver. He had one ideal: saving his country from the enemy. People saw Mustafa Kemal as a leader who dedicated his life to the independence of the nation. Soon after, everyone working in the fields of villages was as self-sacrificing as the soldiers on the battlefield. The independence struggle was based on this belief. Throughout history, the Turkish nation has never submitted to foreign forces. Yielding was never a part of Mustafa Kemal's character. He aimed to revive a new, strong and modern Turkish nation. The first step towards this end was the inauguration of the Turkish National Assembly. The code of laws became effective as soon as possible. The army battling in Sakarya had been aware of his saying, "There is no such thing as a line of defense, only a surface to defend." That surface consists of the entire fatherland. This saying was the key to get rid of the worst threat to the nation. Mustafa Kemal refused to take Istanbul government into account. The new government in Ankara unanimously elected the new president. Atatürk, the symbol of independence, became the president of the republic that he longed for and dedicated his life to. Not only did he change the nation's fate, the flames of independence within him ignited the whole world. Henceforth, the nations struggling for independence took Atatürk's Turkish Republic as a model. The fight on the battleground came to an end. Nevertheless, this was the start of the real fight that was essential for the existence of the Turkish Republic. In this new struggle, the principle of the great commander was peace at home, peace in the world. This time, the ammunition was science and reason. The founder of the Turkish Republic was no longer a soldier. He was the creator of modern Turkey and a revolutionist statesman. Every step he took was in the light of science and knowledge. It was the very same philosophy that made himself and his nation independent. In order to achieve the standards of civilized societies, all the citizens should share the same vision. The first condition was to demolish all the hurdles ahead of reason and science. The reforms to be implemented in every field would create a secular, democratic, and a civilized society. For the Turkish nation, the first tool of an information society was the Latin alphabet. Mustafa Kemal himself carried out this educational reform all across the country. As he was signing his name on the blackboard, Master Teacher Atatürk heralded the bright future. According to the leader of the Turkish people, educating women was highly essential. Raising a daughter meant forming a nation, he thought. The path towards civilization had no barriers anymore. Self-sacrificing Turkish women would have the same rights as men. The abolition of the veil was the symbol of the rights that Turkish women gained. Turkish women would voice their opinions freely. Atatürk's system of philosophy was based on secularism. For him, this doctrine was an absolute necessity. Secularism was the synthesis he reached after having analyzed the social, historical, and national factors. This doctrine he entrusted would be the warranty of the scientific intelligence and modern way of life. Thanks to his extraordinary intelligence, Atatürk did wonders in education, politics, legislation, and economics. His reforms deepened the roots of the young Turkish Republic. This great leader was not a dictator at all. He won the hearts of his people by combining these reforms with social life. Every one of us is the fruit of the tree he planted. That's why we are here, with him. That's why we are paying a visit to him. Every one of us would want to know him better. There he is. He is just near us, with his memoirs and belongings. While we are visiting this place, his deep blue eyes will smile upon us. He will be proud of some of us. Some of us will make him cheerful. And he will continue to teach us. Over 4,000 books he thoroughly read in his library will give us a clue about how he gave an importance to reading, even in a life full of misery, battles, and reforms. In his sleepless nights, or in the nights he preferred reading to sleep, he read some of these books in Tripoli or in Sakarya, maybe on a summer night on his working desk. The last sleep should have been envious of the glance of his deep blue eyes on these books. Death took him from us, but after his death, he started to live in our hearts. He dedicated his life to one ideal. Nothing meant anything other than his ideal. He was born as a genius, grew up as an idealist, and lived as a heroic leader. He devoted his life to his people. From the ruins of an empire, he managed to build up a victorious nation. He did not get tired, weaken, or give up. His success was enough to make him happy. We are at your disposal, Atatürk, so that we can keep the relic you entrusted to us. As your inheritor, we accept the guidance of reason and science to be able to understand the Republican regime just as well as you did. Not only here, but on every inch of the country, your ideal will exist. The modern Turkish Republic will be enlightened with your principles. You are long gone, but as per your requests, your people will proceed to broaden their horizon. Fear not, the crimson flag waving in these dawns will never fade.